Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tell Your Story. I'm your host, Todd Nesloni, the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership at TEPSA. And each episode, I look to bring you a different guest who has encouraged, inspired, or challenged me in one way or another and bring them on to share some of their story in hopes that it inspires you to share some of yours. I am so excited to have my special guest and friend, Chris Pombonyo, on with me. And let me tell you, this was no easy feat because Chris and I have been friends for years. And if you know him, you've probably seen him do like all these lives and he's always in front of the camera, but he's not normally the one getting interviewed. And so I've been asking for a while and he's like, oh no, I don't know. And then one of his good friends, Chase Mayo, came on the show. And Chase, I don't think has ever done an interview. And so I was like, if Chase can do it, Chris, you can get over and do it too. So, Chris, thank you for being here.
Chase for this.
Exactly. We can blame Chase. So, Chris, before we get started, tell everybody a little bit about who you are.
Sure. Chris Pombonyo. I'm a third grade hybrid ELA teacher and instructional coach. So what that means is I teach third grade ELA half of the day, and then I coach ELA the other half of the day. So instructional coach for teachers, working with them in their classrooms, helping them with their instruction, looking at data with them, leading PLCs, things like that. And then my partner teacher, Nikki, we switch. So she teaches our block of kids math, and then she's the math instructional coach the other half of the day. So it's kind of a dream job. I get to still teach every day and still get to work with teachers. So it's pretty awesome.
Well, I'm going to have so many questions about that here in a minute, but I want to kind of start at the beginning, Chris. And so, you come from a family where there's some educators in your family. Your mom's a teacher. I know anybody that follows you online see how much you look up to her and the impact she's had. And so when did you know that teaching was going to be your career?
Yeah, probably, like you said, my mom's a teacher. So probably like when I was 5, like when you start asking, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Every single thing my mom has that you would like draw or write, what do you want to be when you grow up? It was a teacher. I just watched her in her classroom and fell in love with teaching. I would ask for all those like 300-piece kits full of like teacher supplies for Christmas and like all the things. And then if you look at like my yearbooks throughout the years, it says Chris Pombonyo, what do you want to be grow up? Teacher. Like that never changed. That was just kind of the only thing I ever wanted to do. I used to play school with my brother in my basement. My neighbor and I would force him to do homework, have blocks, like all the things. So that was kind of the only thing that I ever wanted to do. That was what I was passionate about. And it just kind of stuck all the way.
I love that. Well, on your path to becoming a teacher, something some people may know about you, but others may not, is that you also got to do some work with Disney. And so, you grew up in New York area, you move on down to Florida, you take that drop. I think every one of us wishes we could work at Disney in some form or capacity. So how did that kind of pop up and what exactly did you do?
Yeah, so growing up in New York, I was doing a lot of theater and things like that. So when I came down to Florida, obviously I went to UCF, and obviously Disney is 20 minutes away from where I went to college. So it was always a kind of like goal that I wanted to do something meaningful there. So I got into entertainment with Disney, and then from connections with different people, actually got an offer to a job at Radio Disney, which Radio Disney kind of brings the magic of Disney out to people in communities and events, and they host things with stars from the Disney Channel or bands or things like that as they come through the town. And they had markets in every major city. So I was obviously working for Radio Disney Orlando. So we got to do a bunch of cool events with Disney Channel stars, major brands like Kellogg's, and things like that are promoting things to kids and families. And we would just help them get their messaging across in fun, engaging ways. So we would do games with them. We would have a DJ at every event playing songs from Radio Disney. We would go live sometimes onto the air and do contests that way, and just really engaging families that can't actually go to the parks, but still bringing that magic to them. So it was a blast, and I did that for a few years in Orlando. Then I got offered to take a position with Radio Disney in New York, so I did that, came back to Orlando. So it was a huge part of my life for a really long time. I actually still did it my first few years of teaching. I would do events like at night or on the weekends or things like that because I just loved it so much.
Well, you can definitely tell that it prepped you for all your video stuff that you do with Get Your Teach On now, right? Because it was like the perfect practice.
Now with that.
And so, what I love that because I see so many pictures and videos like, oh my gosh, Chris got to meet the Fifth Harmony, or Chris got to meet this people or these people. And I'm like, I always get so jealous that you got to meet all these celebrities. So, I see we have a friend of ours, Kevin Bradford, listening to, and I love his question. I've got to ask it. Do you have a favorite person related to Disney that you met?
It's hard. Fifth Harmony is definitely like pretty up there because they were not big at all when they were going through Radio Disney and doing our tour. So I was in a training. I remember this like it was yesterday. I was in a training for some sort of PD over the summer, and I got a text from my boss, and she's like, "We have a huge event at Downtown Disney tonight. Can you be there at 4? It's this band called Fifth Harmony." And I was like, who is Fifth? Like, I had no idea who they were. I'm in the middle of the PD, like, Googling them. I'm asking my friend, like, do you know them? She's like, no. I started listening to their songs, and I was like, okay, they're good. Got to Downtown Disney. On the stage they had Downtown Disney is where they were doing kind of a impromptu concert. It wasn't announced to fans because they were just starting to get bigger, but they were doing a mini kind of Q&A and show there, and we were asked to sponsor it. So it was kind of last minute thrown together. Usually we have, like, prep of like these are the questions you'll ask, these are the messaging. It was like so impromptu, and it was just 3 of us from our team, me and 2 of my really good friends, and they were just very like down to earth. We got to hang out with them, and just I got to kind of experience why everyone loved them so much for the first time, and then I immediately became like a huge fan. And then from there they like took off, and like huge. Like I probably could have been with like best friends with Camilla then, and then now it's like she doesn't even remember that event, probably.
But you remember it, so that's all that matters.
Exactly. I knew them when. I gave them their start. Like, we did a Q&A and everything. I was asking them questions, but I had no idea who they were the entire event. But now, obviously, everyone knows who Fifth Harmony is and Camilla.
That's so funny. So, doing that job before you became a teacher, and some of it while you were a teacher, did you ever consider that as a career opportunity?
I went back and forth. I always knew I loved teaching. Radio Disney just kind of came naturally, and I really loved the marketing side of it. And live events, I love doing that. The first time I like picked up a microphone, I was literally like shaking and sweating. I was like not used to it at all. And everyone was like, why? Like, you did theater growing up, you are on stage, you're dancing all the time. And that's like scripted, right? So you know exactly what you're going to say, where you're going to move. And Radio Disney was the first time where I was kind of forced to like just go with the flow and not worry about what you say and kind of convey it. So the first few events, I remember I was like literally shaking. I was so nervous. I had no idea what I was saying. It's like your first day of teaching. You have no idea. You like black out and don't even know what happened. But just the consistency of it, it prepared me for where I am. Like, who would have thought that job would have prepared me for what I'm doing now? But it really has. So I never wanted to give up teaching, but it was always like 50-50 of like, I'm passionate about teaching, and I'm really passionate about 1, the Walt Disney Company, 2, Radio Disney, everything they had, and just that live event kind of aspect. And now, lucky with Get Your Teach On, I kind of get to do a little bit of all of it, which is pretty awesome.
Well, and I love that you talk about that, because I think that's so important for people to hear, that it's okay to have more than one passion. It's okay to say that you love teaching, but that you also love doing this. That doesn't exactly have to do the same as teaching in a classroom. And so I think that's really cool that you bring that up. And so, when you think about Chris, something that a lot of people may not know about you is, on stage, in the classroom, you're this huge personality. You've got all this energy. You don't mind acting silly. You'll dance, you'll sing, you'll do whatever. But when you come off the stage, like many performers, you're much more chill and down to earth and calm and things like that. And so, how do you balance that introvert extrovert side of things?
I think that's the perfect way to explain it. I read an article probably a year or 2 ago, like introverted extrovert. Like, I would much rather be at my house on the couch in my pajamas, like watching Netflix, than like going out to like social things. And people don't really understand that. Except like some of my closest friends. Like, I'd rather be in a group of 3 instead of a group of like 100. But on stage, like, it's kind of I don't know. It's kind of, I love interacting with everyone. I love meeting new people, but it's kind of that me time to kind of decompress. And I think because so much of what I do in teaching and on stage and lives and things like that is so requires so much energy and outside of the box, I think I kind of need that time for me to kind of decompress. So that's why people often say that to me, like, you're very different in a one-on-one conversation. You're not as much as you are on stage. I expect you to be like that all the time. I don't know. My friends joke that it's my like host voice, but I just like turn it on. Like after Radio Disney for so long, it is out of my control. Like I cannot not talk like that. So anytime I'm in a situation where there's like a group of people or I don't know them, it's like it just like automatically clicks in, because Radio Disney, literally, we would show up to an event, the team would set up, we would set everything up. They'd be like, okay, you have a minute. They would hand the mic and you would just go and talk to like strangers in the middle of a parking lot or a park or something like that. So it's really kind of just like an on-off that I don't even consciously think about anymore. But it's definitely something I'm working on, because I want to find a good balance in the middle, right? So that's a continuous kind of goal or improvement, is to find that balance where it's at. But yeah, I would say introvert, extrovert is a very good way to describe it.
You know, but what you're talking about is, I find that a lot of presenters are that way. And, you know, I think a lot of us are still trying to figure out that middle road, because when you get on stage or when you're on camera, you need to be the big personality. Right. You need to have the energy. That's what, and even in the classroom as the teacher, like the kids feed off of that. And so regardless of if that's your personality or not, that's what you're going to bring, because that's what people want to see. And so I think you're exactly right. Like trying to find that balance of, like, for me, it's like oftentimes I'm loud and I'm full of energy on stage, and I get off and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to just go like have a seat in the back of the room, give me a bottle of water. And people are like, wait, but you were just like crazy.
Like you're the perfect example of like when you see your Todd present, it's like out of the box. And when you're in a conversation with Todd, like you're lucky if he says 3 words to you at a time, because he's just like taking it all in. And you're like, are you good? And he's like, yeah, I'm great. And I'm like, okay. Like, you're so quiet when you're not presenting, but you would never know that when you're like presenting or in front of your staff. I got to come to your school a few years ago, and it's just kind of your job, right? So no matter what job you do, when you have a job to do, like you're going to do it and you're going to give it 110% no matter what. So if I showed up to my classroom or I showed up on stage and I was taking like things I'm thinking about or things that are bothering me with me, then I'm not committing all of myself to that job. So I just try to think about that, and everything I do kind of just go all out and give it my best, because I know that makes the difference for people, and that's the experience they're going to walk away with. And I want them to feel like they're a part of something, and that have that energy as well. And if I just went up there and was like, hey, everyone, welcome, thank you, it would just not have the same effect. So go big or go home. But,
you know, and you surround yourself with a lot of movers and shakers, people doing really great stuff. You have awesome teachers at your school who are doing great stuff as well that you're learning from all the time. You're active on social media. And so, you know, you've got all that going on, plus you have a spotlight on you for some of the stuff that's happening. And I think it's easy to get caught in a comparison trap, or to allow like doubt to begin to seep in of, oh my goodness, now I got to have something better because they did something, or I'm not doing good enough. Or how do you keep that at bay where it doesn't ever take root and overtake you?
Yeah, I think that's something that I struggle with for a long time, especially my first few years of teaching. When I first created an Instagram and started sharing things in my classroom, I always found myself saying, I want to do that. Why am I not like that? Why I need to be better at this. I need to do that. And I just kind of got in my head and got into these like negative funks that just really got the best of me. And that's when I struggled with anxiety and depression and things like that, is when I was comparing myself to others, or it's even easy to get jealous of some things that are happening for some people, and you want to be supportive, but because you're working so hard and you know what you're putting into things, you want to see that for people that are in your inner circle, and you're seeing it happen everywhere else. So it's really easy to kind of get in your head about it. But I think just surrounding yourself with people who are positive and focus on the positive. There's so many people that have negative things to say about everything that you do, right? People are watching every single move. People have comments to say about how you sound, how you look, what you're doing, what you didn't do, what your classroom looks like, what your classroom doesn't look like, what all the things. But I think just kind of growing from that and pushing that out and realizing that I'm doing the best that I can do, and I'm going to surround myself with positive people who are going to do things like change up things and push the boundary and do that instead of complain and be negative. That's gotten me the furthest. And I'm lucky to say my school, like that I'm currently at, I've never been surrounded by more people that just go there, do their work, give it all, and then we go home. We're not all best friends that we're all going to hang out all the time,
right?
Which I know a lot of schools are. My old school was like that as well. But no one is going to be negative or complain, because we're all just there doing the best we can every single day and kind of building that community. So I think just finding that positive support, and that's in my personal life as well. I've cut a lot of people out of my life in the past probably 10 years that I thought would be like lifelong friends or lifelong in my life, but they're just energy, and either negativity or things that they were doing is something that I just didn't want to be around. So that's kind of how I did that.
And I think that's important to talk about, because I think, that in and of itself is a strength that is not difficult to have all the time. I mean, it's not easy to have all the time, but when you do those kind of things, you build yourself up to protect yourself so you can keep going and maintaining. And so you do a lot of fantastic things in your room. And I know you've got a great partner teacher who helps some of it too. And so when you think about all the different kind of crazy things you've done, what's one of your favorites?
Oh my gosh. Probably, I mean, I love a good room transformation. I love the lessons that I'm doing. But my probably favorite moment is when I taught in New York. I taught in the city, I taught in Harlem, and I got an opportunity through UNICEF to bring my students to ring the closing bell for the stock market.
Oh.
And it was on our Thanksgiving break, so it was looking like it's not going to happen. But I knew this is an experience. My students grew up in Harlem. They kind of stayed in Harlem. Even riding the subway was not something they did often because everything they had is right around them.
Right.
I knew this was an experience that they would never get to have ever, and represent our school, represent our network. So I worked my butt off to make it happen and make it work, even though it was during a school break. Our principal was, no one was in school. We had to like work out, how are we going to meet? Where are we going to go? Luckily in New York, you just take the subway everywhere. We don't need buses for field trips. So we still met, and I got to take them. About 4 of my colleagues volunteered to come with me, and we took them on the subway into Times Square, which is crazy.
I was going to say, was that a little like stressful to put them on the subway and in Times Square?
Always. And that is all our field trips. And we did a lot of field trips while I taught there, and it's all walking to the subway, getting on the subway. And if you know New York City subways, it's like this. So then we literally line them up like ducks in a row. The doors open, and we file them on, one teacher at the front, one at the back. And people in New York City do not move, even for third graders in adorable uniforms. Like, they don't care. They will literally stand there. So these are the kids like squirming through the subway, like trying to do it. But we got to ring the closing bell for the stock market. We made it there and back safely. And actually UNICEF got to, and NASDAQ put their pictures on a digital billboard in Times Square after, and just their faces and their reactions of that experience made it all worth it, and everything that we went through to do it. So it's more that experience that kind of rings a bell for me than a certain lesson or things like that, because it just meant so much to them, and they still talk about it today. So just making those experiences happen, it was absolutely amazing.
I love that. And I remember you posting a photo of that, and I was so jealous. I was like, oh my goodness, it's such a cool thing to get to experience that very few people can say they got to have a part in doing. So I know that's something those kids will remember forever. And so, Chris, when you're reflecting on your own life and your successes and your failures, your ups and your downs, and looking at all what got you to where you are today, when you're kind of looking at that, what is one thing that really stands out to you, or that you like, that was really instrumental into creating the man you are today?
That's a tough question. There's so many moments that I'm like, oh, that. I would say probably moving to Florida to go to UCF. I literally graduated high school in New York. High schools go through June. And my summer semester for UCF, my first summer started in June. So I literally graduated, had a graduation party, and left on a plane the next day.
Wow.
To start school at UCF. And I knew no one moving to Florida. Like, I did not know one person that lived here. I did not know one person at UCF. And I just kind of wanted to take that risk and start something new. When I told my parents that I was applying to UCF, they were like, where, how? Like, most people at that time had not even heard of UCF, but I did the virtual tour online. I researched my program. I like fell in love with the school.
Yeah.
I mean, we have like a resort style swimming pool. So who would not want to go to college there? I
mean,
Maybe it's not the point for me. But I just kind of took that risk, and at the age of 18, moved to Florida by myself, got an apartment by myself. My first year, I had a roommate that I didn't even know. It's like when you like sign up, and they're like, okay, do you have a roommate, or do you want us to find you a roommate? And they're like, find you a roommate. And I'm in an apartment with this I think he was a junior. We barely talked the whole like first year. It was not my best time, but I was making it work, right? I
Yeah.
found other things while living with a stranger essentially. But that just taking that risk kind of shaped my path of where I was.
Yeah.
I got to UCF and I found Midway, which is where I'm at now, and that's where I did my internship. From UCF, I found someone who connected me to Radio Disney, which did that. From UCF, I connected myself to teachers that had followed Hope and Wade, and then I started following Hope and Wade and looking what they were doing and that path. So everything kind of stemmed from me taking that risk and going to Florida. That I don't know what it would have happened if I chosen a school in New York and went to school there.
Right.
I don't know if I'd just be like living down the block from my parents and teaching. I mean, making a lot more money. I know that teaching in New York, but I don't know what my path would have been because every experience I have would have been different.
Well, and I love how much you are so proud of UCF, and so much so that you even still go back there and help out with things, and then you do some teaching there too, don't you?
We do. I just actually finished a call with them right before this, but I do their student showcase for them. So every year they have a student showcase where their juniors and seniors, mostly seniors, get to present on a topic of their choice and have the experience of sharing it out with their peers. Principals come, teachers can come, and they invite all education students. And I've had
so it's like a TEDx.
I think for 4 years now to kind of be their keynote and then go around and see the awesome things that they're doing. So I'm still super connected to a lot of the teachers that I had because they shaped me into the teacher that I am. But they're doing incredible things, not just in education, but in every field. And they're just growing so much. They were really small when we first started, but they've just grown so much. And now that they're good at sports, it kind of helps a little bit too. But I'm just really proud that I graduated from there because I fully feel like it prepared me for my career. Which I know a lot of people feel like, but it's just that sense of I learned everything I needed to there, and I want to give back now when I can.
Right. And I think you can really tell that you can tell that had such an instrumental part of your life, that when somebody or something does that, you want to continue to be involved with them and help them out and have all different kinds of ways. And so I think that's really reflective of UCF and how that role it played in your life. Well, Chris, one question I always love to end all of these questions, all of these interviews on, is that I really believe as people, there are certain things we hold really deep to our hearts, our beliefs. And so for anybody listening to or watching today, if there was one thing you wanted them to walk away with, what would your one thing be?
Yeah, I would say just be yourself. Growing up, I found myself wanting to fit in with different groups and please people and cared a lot about what people said. Even as an adult, I went through a phase where I cared a lot about what people were saying, about, like we talked about earlier, what I did, what my voice sounded like, what I wore, who I was friends with, what I was doing. And that can get to you in such a negative way. That's just really not healthy at all. So just be yourself, be proud of who you are, and know that and kind of own that, because that's where it's going to take you to places. No one else is going to be like you. So just kind of own who you are, be proud of who you are, and go off your strengths. Don't try to be someone else. Don't worry about what other people are doing, and just support one another and be kind, because I think we need a lot more of that, especially in education, that everyone is doing the best they can, and to not bring each other down, because we're all in this together.
I love that. And Chris, I think that's the perfect way to end this. And, I've admired your work so much. You came down to my school and did some PD that my teachers talked about for years afterwards.
I still connect on social media with a lot of your teachers from that one day where I came to your school. So that was.
And so, but you are doing such incredible work. And I know that you have people reaching out to you all the time to thank you for stuff, but you play such an important role in so many different educational walks of life, but in mine too. And so I have just looked up to you. I love the stuff you do, and I love following along. So thank you so much for agreeing to coming on this, even though I had to work really hard to get you here.
It seemed like I was like, no, I don't want to do it. I was just like, it never worked. It never worked out.
Yeah.
And we just got 3 years later, and we still. I mean, what is this episode, like 200 something?
We're getting close to 200.
Like,
yeah.
You're pushing that, and I think it was like episode 5 that Todd wanted me to be on. Like, I remember the apartment I lived in, and that was 1, 2, 3. That was 4 apartments ago. Like, that's where I lived. I remember when you asked me, and I was like, okay, we could do it. And then it just didn't work out. Then we tried again like 2 years later. Then I got sick. It was just, I'm glad it finally worked out, so Todd can stop harassing me.
That's right. Well, and thank you everybody for listening or watching another episode of Tell Your Story. Remember, you can check out past episodes on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, wherever you get it, it's there. I hope today's conversation with Chris has encouraged you to get out there and tell your story, because every story matters.